At InDigital, we know that public safety professionals hold themselves to a high standard. In fact, standard doesn't do it justice. In over 25 years working alongside you, carrying millions of calls over our IP networks, your dedication has inspired us. That's why our ESI Net goes beyond industry standards, not only i3 compliant, but designed to adapt to future development for a network you can count on when it matters most. Learn more at indigital.net.
Have you ever met a 911 professional and asked, what's the worst call you've ever taken? Well, here's your answer. I heard your last breath the night you flipped your four-wheeler. I tried to call you the day you committed suicide by driving your car into a tree. Blue face, cold to the touch. I helped you with CPR after you found your infant face down, not breathing. It messed me up. I did everything I could, but it wasn't enough. You were with me from the beginning, Grandma. 27 years later, I took the 911 call when you died. How fitting to be there for me in the beginning, and I was there for you in the end. I miss you, Grandma. I am 911. This is but a glimpse into the world of emergency dispatch. But what is it really like to answer a call during someone's nightmare? What is the impact on the first responder answering the call? From Titletown Publishing, and available on Amazon or where you purchase your favorite books and ebooks. Imagine listening. Your worst day is our everyday.
Quality assurance and quality improvement can be two of the most time-consuming tasks for 911 supervisors and administrators, sifting through hundreds of calls and hours of audio to find the calls they're looking for. Worse, sometimes QA and QI don't occur until longer after a call has occurred, making it difficult to train new hires as they develop their skills in real time and creating the opportunity for mistakes to be repeated. Prepared Assist can help change that. Prepared Assist processes and transcripts call audio in real time while giving supervisors the ability to set keyword triggers that alert them whenever a certain word is said on a call. After they're alerted, the supervisor can watch the call happen in real time, ensuring that it's handled properly and passing on any training guidance immediately after. With real-time QA and QI through Prepared Assist, your center can operate more efficiently and effectively. Visit prepared.com/QA-QI-audio to see it in action. If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This episode is sponsored by InDigital, a leader in next-gen core services, and a big shout-out, as always, to subscribers of the podcast, whether you are on Circle, Patreon, or Facebook. Thank you so very much, but all of you as well who are here watching, listening, supporting, sharing, all of it. Thank you so very much, because I wouldn't be able to do everything that I do if it wasn't for all of you. Because of you, you have made Within the Trenches podcast, Imagine Listening, the I Am 911 movement. Everything that I do is because of all of you and your continued support and your trust in me to share your story. So thank you so very much for all of that. A lot of big things going on. As always, I have a week full of episodes to not only record, but also edit, and a lot of conferences that I'm going to be going to as well, and classes that I'll be teaching in North Carolina and Kansas, possibly out in Colorado. So there's a lot of different places that I'm going to be heading out to, and I am super excited for that. But I also want to mention a big shout out to Prepared for being a new Social Media Plus sponsor. Thank you, Prepared, very, very much. And as you heard in the beginning, we've got some ad reads, some information for Prepared that they sent to me, and it was a lot of fun doing those as well. So I hope you enjoy those. That's information at the beginning of the podcast and at the end, and there are also different posts and other types of cool content that are going to be going out. So again, shout out to Prepared. Thank you all very, very much, and I am excited for my guest today. We're going to be jumping right in, and my guests are Ashley and Greg. Ashley is out of Rockland PD and Fire, and then Greg is out of Cal Fire. Both of them are out of California. How's it going?
Hello.
Hi, how are
Hello,
you?
hello. I am doing well. How about yourselves?
Great.
Doing all right.
Happy to be here.
All right, awesome. Now, Greg, though, you've got some overtime tonight, right?
Yes, I do.
All right.
Graveyards. Fun stuff.
Okay, so then I have to, before we get right into your stories and all, I have to ask the both of you, what would you rather do? Days, mids, or nights?
Ooh.
I have a mid shift that I've been thankful to have for the last couple of years, and it's
Mhm.
my bread and butter. So I get to not wake up too early. I could never do days.
Naturally, I'm a night person, but
Mhm.
for the family life, got to pick days.
Oh, okay. All right. And that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. When I was working in dispatch, my most favorite was midnights. And I had a short stint where I was on days and I hated it. But the reason though, however, is I mean there's a lot more admin calls. There's not a lot of things going on because of those types of calls. And it's different everywhere, right? It's different in every area that you're in. But for me, because I lived, and of course this is my fault, but because I lived about 45 minutes or so from the dispatch center in a different county, um, it made for mornings. It just wasn't fun because I would have to wake up at 3 in the morning
Ooh.
to make sure to leave by 3:30 in the morning to get to dispatch by a quarter after 4 to be briefed and then start my shift. I almost said session. Start my shift from 4:30 in the morning to 4:30 in the afternoon.
Oh,
Those
gross.
12s. Yes.
The bad part about being on the shift I am is they move me where I'm needed. So I will get ordered sometime days, and we don't start until 6 and we don't do briefing. But still, yeah, it's an early morning, and I just sit in my chair and I'm like, we'll be alive in 4 hours. Please do not disturb. Like,
Oh, that is hilarious. Yeah, I just, and when I very first started out though, and I was working mornings in the central dispatch, that is, because I worked at two different centers. But when I was working at the central dispatch center, I was working mornings with a team of seasoned ladies that were dispatching, and I mean they taught me everything, and I enjoyed my time with them. But there was one dispatcher, she loved coffee, and I love coffee too. But I tried to go cup for cup with her once, bro.
Oh.
no.
No. No, yeah. No, she like I said, she was seasoned. She knew what she was doing. And like sometimes she would go through a couple pots. And I thought, I can keep up. I can no. By the second cup, I was flying and I felt like I was dying. Like
You ran home and forgot your car.
pretty much. Yeah, that's how fast I was. I was all over the place. But yeah, I tried to go cup for cup with her and she's like, "Where are you?" It's like, "I'm dead. I'm over here." I can't do it anymore. But yeah, I had to ask because everybody is different. Everybody, some like nights, some like days, and some actually like mids. And you actually you dig mids. I couldn't do mids because I felt like I was, I guess, kind of missing out on a lot of different things.
Well, it works because I'm able to be home at night for the kid and
Ah,
see him off to school in the mornings.
yeah.
It is a lot because I see every shift. I see everybody. But on the flip side, I get to know about all the calls. Like I'm there for most of it. So
That makes sense. And it all works out. You end up having all that information and everything as well. And I'm glad it works for you. I'm glad it works for the both of you because a lot
yeah.
of times, when you are in a family that has public safety in it, whether it's, your boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse, however it works, sometimes it doesn't always work. What I mean by that is it just not that it doesn't work. You just have to adjust a lot more. And for the both of you, it looks like it's been working out well. So let's jump into the story here because for the both of you, Ashley, you've got about 19 years, right? And Greg, you've got 12 under the headset, but 16 total. So Ashley, let's start with you. How did you get involved in public safety to begin with?
Well, so had not such a great childhood, lots of violence and things like that. And at a very young age, I clicked that when you call the police and they show up, the bad things stopped. And so for me, it was, hey, I really want to be that person for somebody else that's maybe in my position. So when I was 15 or so, I joined a cadet program and then made it through the ranks, aged out at 18. And right out of high school, I applied at my first agency, which was Placerville, and for part-time records. And I get a call from the captain, and they're like, hey, we actually need a dispatcher and you'd be great. So we're putting you in for full-time dispatch. So there you go. And that was how I got in right out of high school. Know nothing, but was very excited and scared shitless. But
okay, hold on. So at 15, you end up jumping into the program. Tell me really quick, and for the listeners as well, those who are watching and listening, how does that cadet program work, and what were some of the things that you were learning during that time?
So with a cadet program, we had biweekly meetings, and there were a certain amount of volunteer hours that we did, whether it was cleanups, we did fingerprinting kids at events, posting up at a position during parades. But it really gave me an insight into law enforcement because you're learning all the things. They taught us building searches, radio codes, fingerprinting, how to use a radio. We got to do ride-alongs. You got to really learn the city too, which ended up being really helpful when I went behind the headset because I knew every nook and cranny. Like when the locals call and say, hey, we're at the taco house, I know where the taco house is, and those kind of things. So it was vital information to learn so young.
Man, I'm trying to wrap my head around this a little bit because as a cadet, thinking of my time, as a 15-year-old, I mean that would have blown my mind, and it would have been a lot of fun as well, especially thinking about some of those ride-alongs. So just to clarify, the ride along, it was with law enforcement or was it with others or other disciplines of public safety?
So it was only law enforcement. It was
Okay.
only within the agency itself. So you were riding along with the officers. So getting to even establish those relationships with officers that I would end up, working with on shift later was really helpful.
Did you get a chance at all ever during those ride-alongs to go code like lights and sirens?
Absolutely. Oh yeah. Oh
Oh,
yeah. It
damn.
was fun. The amount of waivers that we had to sign in the beginning.
Oh,
But
for sure.
we got to see some shit. It was fun. They would stir it up, and every now and then they'd be like, push the light button. I thought it was the coolest thing ever.
So here's a question then. When you first got into one of those lights and sirens calls, um, were you told right off the bat to brace yourself?
Sort of. I was with a very seasoned officer, and it
Mhm.
was, here's the button to release the shotgun. If shit goes south, have my back. I'm like, okay. Like, I
Oh
can
man.
do it.
So and the reason first that's awesome. And second, the reason I was asking is because when I switched, because I started my dispatch career in Central Florida, and then I moved back home to Southwest Michigan, finished off my career in the county that I grew up in. And the first ride along that I did with them, with the county, I we jumped on the highway and we're going lights and sirens. Nobody told me to brace myself. So
Oh
as
no.
as we're and I also wasn't thinking about it because I thought, hell yeah, here we go. Throw those lights and sirens on. Here we go. I wasn't thinking about what was going to happen. So as we're like kind of going through traffic trying to get to this
Oh.
in progress call, I'm like, pop. pop, like going back and forth and almost cracking my head on the window, and the deputy's laughing at me, and I was like, yeah, okay. Like, I get it. I need to brace myself now. So people probably saw us passing by and me, with my face just smashed into the window. But
Bear down.
yes, those were some fun times. So it sounds like you went through a lot already right off the bat with that experience and moving in, and you end up getting this position right at 18. Now, I was 19 when I started, so I can relate there, starting early and having dealt with so many different things, but also thinking like, how is this that I'm at this age and I'm working with all of this, and it's just kind of your mind gets blown a little bit, doesn't it?
It does. And my first agency, we were solo. And so I was by myself for 12 hours and they had me on graveyard. And I'm sitting there like, I need an adult, and realizing somebody's decided I'm the adult. I'm like, who thought this was a good idea?
Right. And you're running everything.
Yes.
People are calling you, whether it be, whoever is out on the road or those calling for help, and it's all you. And when
Yeah.
it goes to hell, it goes to hell. And was it 8 hours, 12
It
hours?
was 12 hours, 4 days a week.
Oh man. Okay. We're going to come right back to you.
Okay.
So, Greg, how about you? How did you get into public safety to begin with?
So I come from a fire and law enforcement family.
Mhm.
Similar to Ashley, when I was in high school, I got into the local cadet program with, I lived in Vacaville, which is in Northern California. My dad was a firefighter for 27 years, retired a few years ago as a fire captain. Thought, you know what, with my dad being a firefighter, this cadet program, I might be able to kind of see the other side of things with law enforcement, work alongside them on ride-alongs, community events, that sort of thing. So similar to Ashley, did the cadet program for a few years, went to go get my associate's degree in college in criminal justice, went through an EMT course, and then had an opportunity for an EMS dispatch position in lieu of an EMT position. I was told, hey, you can get your foot in the door, kind of get familiar with things. And then from then on, I was just kind of like, you know what, I think dispatch is kind of the way I want to go, and eventually ended up in the big leagues, so to speak, moving into 911, moved to Utah for a few years and did it out there, and then came back to California.
Oh man. Okay, so coming from a public safety family and background and everything, what are some of the things that you remember growing up with?
Well, barbecues and family get-togethers were a lot of just, giving each other shit about, oh, you're the ones, we go in and clear the scene for you. You guys have to stage, or, oh, cops always want to be firefighters. And, just a lot of the kind of back and forth banter, or, there'd be an incident that would pop off and some of us would have to, leave and go in on a callback, or, something like that. So it always made for a fun time. And, even like Saturday nights, instead of being out, as a young college kid, instead of out partying, I was, on ride-alongs on a fire engine or in a patrol car. So,
Oh man. Okay, so there's so many similarities here, but I have to, because it's crazy to hear the both of you have kind of a similar background and everything. How did you two meet?
I'll let you take this one.
So there's this app, sorry, the cat, that became very popular called TikTok.
Mhm.
And I got into posting funny like 911 videos and stuff like that. But I found it was an officer's post, and he's shotgunning a Red Bull before work. And so I just put in there, Red Bull is lifeblood, because same.
Yes.
So then a little while later, he commented on my comment and basically said facts, especially what flavor was it?
Oh, the cranberry.
The cranberry one was his favorite. And so I was like, who's this guy? Nobody ever comments on a comment. And so I went and I looked and saw he was local, and I slid into the DMs. And I said, I believe I started out with, howdy, neighbor, because he put that he was in a neighboring agency, and the rest is history.
Yep. 2.5 years later, here we are.
Oh man, that is so. I mean, when did you two, when you were talking and everything, when you were talking in the beginning, you started sharing how the both of you came up in public safety as well. I mean, what was that thought? Because for me, just listening to the both of you talk, in my head, I'm thinking, what are the odds that you two would end up meeting the way you met and come together and everything, but also have such a similar background in starting out?
It's interesting. It leads to a lot of, sharing stories, and it's fun finding the similarities, but also differences.
Mm-hmm.
There are times where it's like, well, I learned this way and my way's better. And he's like, well, no, I learned this way. And
It's a house divided.
sometimes it is.
Yeah.
Yes. He wears a lot of red. I wear a lot of blue. But
Oh man,
it's
just
Crips
like
and
Halo,
Bloods up
just
in
like
here.
red versus blue. Oh man, that is interesting.
It makes it nice because obviously it works for those that aren't in public safety,
Mhm.
but having both of us in it and such similarities, just how easy it is to validate what each other's feeling and going through, it makes it really smooth and really easy.
See, and that's one of the things that I was going to ask the both of you as well is when you're going through your shifts and all, and then you come home and you're together, it has to feel good to have that support system. Not that folks that are married or boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, whatever the case may be, not that someone who does not come from public safety would not understand, but there's a little bit more that makes it, I guess, special in a way,
Yes.
because you know exactly what it's like if you have taken a certain call and you're kind of down about it or just really in your head thinking about it. Ashley might have taken a similar call and she's able to talk to you about how it went for her or vice versa,
Absolutely.
and I love that you both have that dynamic, but also that support system, because there's a lot of folks out there who are just kind of floating in the wind, so to speak, where like myself, um, when I would take some of these hard calls, like my wife doesn't come from public safety or anything, and I would talk to her about them, but she would tell me I'm not sure how to respond to you other than to, hug you and, give you a kiss or whatever and tell you that I love you. And I'm like, that's really all I need, you know?
Yeah.
But there were times as well where we would be at a cookout with officers or whatever and other dispatchers, and I would be sharing the funny stories, and she would hit me on the arm and say, "How come you don't ever tell me those stories? How come you're telling me all the other ones?" I'm like, "Because those are the ones that are in my head at the time." So it's cool that the both of you have that.
Well, it's nice because he shares the similar dark humor and stuff. Sorry, the cat is incredulous. But because I love the humor and the dark jokes, and in past relationships, you almost don't share the hard calls because you want to save them from the shitty parts of humanity.
Right. Very true.
But he actually, where he works, he's able to listen to my radio channel. And so he'll make comments sometimes of, why'd you send that engine instead of that engine? Or he'll be driving to work and I'm able to take calls on the floor. And so I'll set him down, my phone's open, and I'll take a call. And I know it's going to be an EMD. And I go, fuck, because he is going to critique the way I EMD it because he's an EMD master. And so he'll be like, why did you ask it this way? And I'm like, stop. My supervisor has joked that I've become better because I'm worried that he's going to give me shit. And so,
hey, I mean, whatever works, right? But also for those who are watching and listening, because there's a lot of folks that watch and listen that are from the general public that like to hear, the stories and the processes and all of this stuff. For those who are watching and listening who don't know what EMD is, I do. But for those who don't, what is that? What is it exactly?
It's emergency medical dispatch. It's the protocols and the program that we gather information and give instructions for those who are calling for medical reasons.
Now, very well said. And also, do you have the electronic version or do you have the cards?
We have both.
Both have
Oh.
both of them. We primarily both use the ProQA, the
Yeah.
electronic, but when things go down or if you need a quick reference, we have the card. Both of us have the card sets right there that we can go to.
Right, exactly. And again, for those who are watching and listening with those cards, when I was in dispatch, the dispatch center that I was in, we did not have the ProQA yet.
Ooh.
But I mean, we had all the cards. So again, for those who are watching and listening, the cards are like they're like this big, they're enormous, and you flip. So you're asking all of these main questions, and depending on the answers of those questions, you flip to whichever type it might be, and then you read from there and you go off of those. But when someone is saying that they're in labor, you're like, oh my God.
I can never find the card in time. I'm like, oh, where?
Those are the worst ones to navigate. Absolutely.
Yes, they are. There are two different sections of those, and you're reading all of those, and it's, they're just talking about, getting towels, getting a shoestring, and
Yeah.
all of these different things, and you're just going. And we would sit there sometimes and we would practice with the cards and we would start, throwing out questions and we would go through scenarios, but damn, when it actually happens, it doesn't matter how many scenarios you've gone through. It's just like, here we go.
This may sound terrible, but I'd take a CPR over a childbirth any day.
Whoa, really?
Yes.
He's the CPR king. He gets them every shift, it seems like.
Wow. So would you say that you're possibly the ship magnet?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
Black
really?
cloud, ship magnet, absolutely.
Oh no. Okay, so before we go back into the come up and everything, as a ship magnet, like how many calls do you think during those moments of being a ship magnet are just like rocking? They're just coming in.
Ooh.
How about this? Is it to the point where you've taken so many that you look up at the clock and what you think should be, man, it should be halfway through the shift, it's actually only been like 15 minutes?
Oh, absolutely. Probably at least a few times a week, at least.
Oh, man. Okay. I will work with Ashley then, not Greg. But then again, no, because I like being busy too. So, okay. I'll work with Greg. Yeah, because I would rather be busy. There would be a lot of times, and of course, those who are watching and listening, they're going to think, wait, why? Why do you want it to be busy? And the reason I say that too is because I used to tell my family and friends, they would ask, "Oh, how's dispatch been?" I would say, "Man, it's been kind of dead." No pun intended. It's been kind of slow. And they would say, wow, why? And I would say, "What do you mean, wow?" And they would go, "Well, I mean, doesn't that mean that people don't need help? Isn't that a good thing?" And I would say, "No, that is a good thing." And yeah, I'm glad that people don't need help, but that's my job. That's the profession that I work in. This is my career, and I want to help people.
Right.
But you always have to explain to people who are not in public safety because they're like, "Bro, that's some bullshit. Like, why are you being like that?" It's like, no. Like, you don't understand.
Yeah.
So going back really quick to the both of you, Greg, I'll start with you. How
Sure.
was the training when you first got in there? Like, were there any things that really surprised you? And the reason I asked too is because you come from public safety. You've had all of these different experiences on the way up and stuff. So was there anything that surprised you, or was it pretty much how you thought it was going to be?
No, it felt pretty natural. I've also got some reserve and volunteer fire time on an engine. Growing up around fire stations, patrol cars, and everything kind of felt natural. But I'm huge on the why, and so getting in, whether it was my EMS dispatch or 911 dispatch experience, I wanted to be a sponge, soak it all up. I was very glad that I understood what was happening on the other side of the radio. So to me, it felt like it came very easy. I think the hardest thing is when I moved out to Utah. Just they're on a completely different addressing system out there. They're on the grid system. So just trying to learn the new geography and everything when I was out there, I think that was probably my hardest, but it came pretty quick. I felt like kind of once I dove into it.
So I think that's probably one of the most important things, right? Is the geography part.
Yes.
And especially if you, get a chance to go do a geo ride, which is basically a geography ride. You go,
Yes.
like if you end up hearing someone on the phone, and again, this is just a complete example, but if you hear someone on the phone say, "Yeah, it's just by Bob's Road, there's a tree there, and it's missing this big branch or whatever," you're like, "Bob's Road, okay, but there is someone there who will know
Yes.
what Bob's
Absolutely.
Road
Mhm.
is," and that's when you get a chance, you drive out. That's the geography ride. You drive out to where Bob's Road is at, so that if someone, brings it up again, you know exactly where it's at.
Yeah, and well, it's been very awesome too because where I work now, it's a little bit more rural,
Mhm.
and it's the same county where she started. So being newer to the county that in the unit that I'm in now, because I grew up a couple counties over, she's been huge in helping with geography on the days off, kind of, just driving around the county and learning it. Or, when someone calls in and says, oh, I'm on Jake Way, and I'm like, what is that? And she's like, oh, it's Jaqueer, but everyone locally calls it Jake Way. And, learning those little tidbits, it's been huge.
Yes,
So
that is very important because a lot of people, in my area would say, "No, we're just off of Versailles," and I would go, "Versailles? I don't know where that's at." And then someone would say, "Bro, it's Versailles." I'm like,
oh
"Oh,
yeah.
oh, okay, yeah, Versailles. Yeah, I know exactly where that's at." Like, it's just folks are saying it different. It's just like if someone says the car is in the Meridian, and you're like, "What? You're on such and such highway, right?" They're like, "Yeah, they're in the Meridian, though." Like, "What do you mean the Meridian?" And there's like the green patch that's in between both sides of the highway. I'm like, "Oh, the median.
The median, yeah.
Oh, okay." So there's
Al-
there's go ahead.
Alarm dispatchers are the worst
Mhm.
at pronouncing things. I'm like, what are you trying to say?
Like, I'm trying to say
Granite. They
zone
can't say
3.
granite. It's granite.
Oh.
Like,
Yeah, so, yeah, and in every center or region, area, whichever, everything is said different, man. It's just like just one quick thing here, like in Indiana. I live in what in Michigan we would call a subdivision, but in Indiana they call them auditions. Like, "What?" Like, okay, I mean, it's the same shit, but all right. But there are those things, right, that you
Yeah.
end up picking up and everything. So, Ashley, for you, as well, how was it when you were first starting out in your training and everything? How did that go for you?
my first agency, I was there 3 months, and they're like, "We need people, soar little bird," and so they threw me on night shift. And thank God for the county dispatchers that I would call and be like, "I don't know what to do," and so they would help me. They were very kind
Yeah.
in guiding me and helping me. But when coming from a solo agency, I was by myself for 9 years on graveyard, and I moved to my current agency, which is larger, and being around other people, my calls, when I would enter them, it was just the info that I needed. I wasn't used to creating a call that somebody else had to read and understand. And so that was such a hard transition of, hey, I need more than just like your little cliff notes. And also, I hadn't talked to people in 9 years. And so my trainer's like, you have to shut up. Like, you have to stop talking, because anytime there was downtime, I was like, oh, there's people. What do you think? But it was a hard transition. And then learning the fire and EMD, those were all new to me, which I hated them at first.
Mhm.
But now they're black and white. Like, there's no gray area really for them. So it's easier. And then all the things that he's taught me, I now understand the difference between a quint and a tiller and all of these other fancy terms. And so um, it's interesting.
So that is something that I don't think I've really thought about in all of these years, because I had a little bit of a transition as well. When I first started in dispatch, it was it was a small police department, probably 12, 13 sworn officers, and that's including the sergeant, lieutenant, and the chief. And
Mhm.
there were only a few of us dispatchers, and it was one person on for 8 hours. And when I moved back to Southwest Michigan, I was working at a central dispatch, so I was working with the team as well. And you're right, trying to learn about all of those different things and how to work with the team and stuff, it was kind of difficult in the beginning, because just as you said, and you really, it made me think about it, like maybe that's why I was having some issues and stuff with the narrative when I would put things in, and people would be like, I need more information, because I was simply putting it in the way I was doing it when I was by myself. So
Mhm.
well done there. You helped me through a point right now as well. So you going through all of that, learning it. What about when you start taking your phone calls, those first phone calls that are coming in, whether it's while you're still training or off training? Do you remember some of those first phone calls in the beginning there?
So I remember, I don't know, I don't remember my first calls. I remember like your first type of call.
Hmm.
So my
Yeah.
first EMD call was a deceased person. And it was like, oh, yay, it can only get better from here. As bad as that sounds.
Right.
Like, hey, once not that I kill them, but, once you kill someone, there's only going up from here.
Right.
And, or like your first structure fire, your first pursuit, like you remember those ones. But I just remember being on night shift my first night, staring at the phone, like, please don't ring, just begging it not to happen. Because I was so scared I was going to mess it up.
Oh man. So when those calls came in, though, I mean, you've got all of your training and everything, right? And you're nervous and stuff. The reason I asked too is because my first night in dispatch, very first night, it was an interesting thing, because I'm being shown by my trainer everything that's there. He takes a 911 call, I watch, and then I think, all right, well, whenever this happens, whenever I get my chance, I'll be ready for it. And he turns around and he's like, "You're next." And I'm just standing there kind of looking at him in disbelief. And I started chuckling. I said, Are you serious? And he goes, "I'm serious. You're next." So my first night, I took my first call,
Oh, man.
and I was sweating as well. I was nervous, super nervous, to the point where, and I don't mean to be gross or anything, but like my back, like I felt the middle of my back. And this was in Florida, so it was kinda hot in there already, but, the sweat is just kinda rolling down my back, and I'm freaking out. And that first call comes in, and luckily, it was a butt dial.
Yep.
But that's what it was like
Oh, yeah.
for me, that first night. It was already taking phone calls and stuff, and I thought, "Hell no." Like, there has to
Wow.
be more training, which there was. The following week, I had a beginner's, like, 40-hour dispatch training
Yeah.
class, but that first night, oh, dude. It was something else.
There's something to be said for the sink or swim method, though.
Right, yeah. Yeah, definitely. It happens a lot, and, well, at least back when I had first started out, that's how it was happening. It's a lot different now, right? There's way more that goes into it, but hell, we never know. There might be some smaller dispatch centers out there that's like, whoop, throw you right into the
Yeah.
lion's den. It's like, "All right, sink or swim. Let's see what happens." But also for those who are watching and listening, in my situation, I'm sure in other situations as well, when you get thrown on that first call, there's somebody listening with you. There's someone who is
Absolutely.
going to jump in. So for those who are watching and listening and are thinking, "Oh my God, these guys have no training." No, we have tons of training, and we
Oh, yeah.
train for hours and hours and hours. That might have been my first night with no training, and I was already taking a phone call, but my trainer was right there and he was listening. So for the don't get it twisted. We have people who are listening to help as well, because people who are calling us for help, we're there to help them, and there's others who are helping us when we were first starting out. So I got to make sure to
Yes.
put that out there so that I don't see on social media like, "Oh, Ricardo said this shit. People don't get trained." No, they do get
No.
trained. People get trained. There's people there to help. There's an entire process, and it is crazy intense. So
Yes.
don't ever question the training of a 911 professional, because there's a lot that goes into it. Greg, how about you for in your training and everything? Once you had surpassed that part, your phone calls when you first started out with those calls, what was that like for you? Was it
So,
nerve wracking?
in my initial 911 dispatch experience out in Utah, um, it was, I mean, we were a very large center, almost a million people population in the Salt Lake Valley. And it was not uncommon to intake anywhere from upwards of 80 to 110 calls in a even 8 to 10 hour period. A lot of them were, non-emergent or butt dials. But there, I can remember I was almost off. I was in my second phase of training and logged in. And within 20 minutes of starting the shift, I had a person that had been stabbed in the abdomen and was being chased by the person that stabbed him. Right after that call, I hung up. I had a female that was 38 weeks pregnant with contractions 2 minutes apart, prepping her to have a baby. Didn't quite have it before they got there, but then hung up the phone. And the next call after that was a father who found his 15-year-old son with a bag over his head and was purple, and provided CPR instructions. So it was, sometimes, yeah, exactly. But my very, very first call on my own, my headset fell out of my ear as soon as I answered the phone. So I'm scrambling to put it back in. And luckily enough, it was a disconnected cell phone that had hung up after it called. It was just a dial tone. So,
Oh, dude. Jeez. Oh man. Okay. Let's backtrack a little bit here. So those 3 calls that you had mentioned right off the bat, that was like while you were still in training? Like
yeah, my
those.
second phase of training.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I had a little bit of training and
Mhm.
obviously my prior experience. So to me, I was like, okay, let's go. Let's do this. And my poor trainer, she's over there like, let's take a break for a little bit. Let's go for a walk. Like, let's step back a little bit here. And I'm just like, look, we're here to work. Let's go.
Oh man. Okay. So, and how old are you at this time?
At that time, I was maybe 25, 26.
Either way, it is either way. Not even talking about age or whatever. That's a lot for anybody to take at any
It is.
age, going from one to the next to the next. And I think that's why this podcast is so important as well, is for those who are listening, who are either in public safety in 911, whether they're just starting out, seasoned or retired, but especially those who are listening that are in the general public, for them to understand as well what can happen and that this shit is real. Like you can go from call to call to call, and you don't always get a chance to get up and take a break or
Right.
even just roll your chair back and just kind of sit there with your thoughts. There's not a lot of time to decompress. In some places, you might get a chance. And even in a place where, just as an example for you, you could have had, after these back to back to back calls, there could have been a moment, right? Because in any place, it's possible that you'll have a moment, but a lot of times you don't. And
Right.
you just go to the next one. And it's usually when you're leaving the center, when you're leaving from your shift, that is when you get a chance to decompress. So
Yep.
here's a question for the both of you, as it sounds like the both of you have done a lot and have been through a lot through all of your years and everything. How do you decompress after either a string of calls or even a hard call or even an entire hard shift? Ashley, let's start with you.
I'm very thankful. I've become very thankful for my commute home because it's around 40 minutes sometimes, and I'll, either throw on music and sing even though I can't carry a tune, or listen to the good old murder podcasts, or listen to you and hearing, people with similar stories, and just, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
And, I have him, thankfully. For me, I beat myself up when you have a hard call. You're like, could I have done more? Did I do the right thing? And that's really hard to overcome. My brother's thankfully a police sergeant, so I can talk to him also. And thankfully my center is we're very close and everybody is very supportive. So if there's any time that you have a question of how bad did I fuck up, I'll ask my supervisor and she'll like, oh, I'll pull the call. And she's a little bebop and Disney girl. She's got this, high pitched voice and makes everything sound so nice. And so I'd say my biggest thing is just talking it out with others. I've learned that holding it in is the worst thing because it rotates, it sits and spins.
That is awesome. That is excellent to hear because, a lot of people learn from this program as well, listening to all of your stories, how you deal with certain things. And when people are dealing with something similar, that's what they start looking for because they don't want to feel alone.
Mhm.
And out of over a decade of doing this program, that's probably one of the biggest things that I've seen in emails from people is just saying, thank you for doing this and having these stories out there because and this was one of the first people who had sent something to me. Excuse me. They said that they were in training and they were struggling really bad and they felt like they were completely alone. And then they started listening to episodes or reading some of the stuff that I had put out there. And then they realized, no, I'm not alone and I'm not in this alone. And when I feel comfortable, I'm going to talk about it. And to hear you say the things that you've said, that is amazing because I found out the hard way. And that was by bearing my calls. And I wouldn't really share them and I wouldn't put them out there because there was that stigma and the stigma is still there in some places, right? But that stigma of if you're asking for help, you're weak. And that's not the case. There's more courage in actually opening up and sharing and being vulnerable because there are a lot of folks who won't. But when you do, and those other folks hear about it and they feel comfortable enough, eventually, when they're ready, they start sharing as well. And that's when we all come together in support because we have each other. So that is awesome to hear.
Well, and even it's great to see a lot of people maybe don't have the support systems at home that I do or their center, but you see the dispatch, Facebook groups, Instagram groups, things like that. I mean, even, the I am 911 movement, you see people sharing stories or people able to vent and feel validated and vindicated and all the things that they're going through, I think is extremely helpful. And it's good to see the community come together. Like, I don't know you personally, but we do the same job. So I'm here
Mhm.
for you.
Yeah, exactly. And when I founded the I Am 911 movement back in 2016, that was one of those things that came out of it as well, is people just continued sharing and sharing and sharing. And we're so happy to have the outlet to be able to do so, but also to do so anonymously, that
Mhm.
they continued sharing and they've been sharing ever since. And that's why I said, even in the beginning of this episode, and I say it all the time, it's because of all of you and what you do and the stories that you are comfortable now sharing that have made the movement what it is today. So again, shout out to everybody
Yeah.
for sharing your stories and being able to or feel comfortable to do so. So Greg, how about you?
How do you de-stress?
How do I de-stress?
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
so I have about a 30-minute commute. Same kind of thing, podcast, music, um, talk to her on the phone, go over the day. I'm also very big on when I'm not at work, I've got hobbies. I snowboard, I PC game, mountain bike, golf. I get out there and I just get into something to take my mind off of it. I'm a magic key holder at Disneyland. Got into doing that recently. So just anytime I've got vacation,
Mhm.
just or even regular days off, just get out there and try and get my head into something else.
Amazing.
So
That is,
that's yeah,
go ahead.
it's one of those things that like I tell new people when I've got trainees is when you're out of these walls, go find a hobby because it will help.
I am all about that because and also, hang on to your friends that are not
Mm-hmm.
in
Yes.
public safety as
Yeah.
well because this whole thing does not define you, right? And it's good to have those folks outside of it so that you can, kind of take a break a little bit from everything that you do daily, when you're, in dispatch and stuff. Because I hung on to, all of my friends and everything else, and I would go and hang out with them. Excuse me. And of course, sometimes somebody would ask me something and I would answer, but after that, it was just, whatever we were doing at the time. But of course, like an ambulance or fire truck would go by, sirens are going off, and I'm standing there and they're like, "Man, you can't escape work, can you?" I'm like, "Shut up. No, I can't." Like it follows me everywhere, but it's always good to have that. For me, before I got into like yoga and meditation and other things, I would come home and sometimes I would play I would game for a
Yeah.
couple hours and then I would go to sleep. And of course it would be something like survival horror or some Call of Duty or some shit that's like loud and whatever, where you kind of you want to when you're decompressing, you don't think a lot of loud stuff will help, but I mean it kind of does. It's a
It does.
distraction, right? Other times I would get home at about 5 in the morning, and this would be in Michigan. It would be like a blizzard outside, but I would get a couple beers and I would go outside and I would shovel a path on my deck and clean off the grill. And with the snow that I had shoveled through, I would put the 2 beers in there as its own refrigerator, and I would grill up a steak for steak and eggs. And people would pass by because I during that time I stayed in a duplex, and behind us was this apartment complex, and people would pass by, and I'd be standing out there in a blizzard, grilling food, having a cold beer, and just like throwing up a peace sign, like "Have a good time at work. I'm here."
Nice.
So that would be for me.
It
That's
did
what I
take some
do.
getting used to. Like, it's okay. Like, working graveyard, coming home,
Mhm.
cracking a beer at like 7 in the morning. You're like, it is okay. I don't have a problem. This is just my work hours.
Yeah, or the
Right.
24-hour Mexican food place and eating cheese enchiladas, rice and beans at 7 o'clock in the morning is,
Dude,
that's your dinner time when you're working night shift.
I'm all about it. Yes, I am right there with the both of you. Yes, hell yes. Man, I would have loved to have worked with the both of you. That would have been awesome. So, um, for my next question, and of course, as long as you both feel comfortable, Greg, will start with you.
Okay.
Is there a call or anything that you can think of, something that kind of sticks with you?
I've got a couple. Probably most recently with my current agency. So I work with Cal Fire. We have 21 emergency command centers statewide. I've worked at 2 of them. I've been there for coming up on 4 years now. The first one I worked at a couple counties over. During 2020, we had one of our busiest fire seasons on record. And it got to a point where, we had people evacuating and the fire was moving very quickly. There were a handful of people who decided to stay with their homes and were calling in saying that they were, overcome by fire. They were trapped on their properties and needed help, getting out. So hearing the screams and pleas for help and trying to then get that information out to the field units and them having to basically go into like a rescue mode, diverting aircraft to help support the rescue efforts. And, some of that was pretty intense. And I mean, I'd been doing things and been out in the field for quite a while, but to actually hear that for once, that was quite a trip. And then when I was working out in Utah for a few years, I had a lady that called in an apartment complex and said that there was a female outside being assaulted by a group of males. And so she's, given me all the description, everything that's going on. And she said, "Oh, my husband went to go try to help her." And I was like, "Well, tell him, to keep his distance, keep himself safe." "Oh, no, it's okay. He's a concealed carry permit holder." And I'm like, "Okay, well, let's let the officers come and deal with it. And, let's try to keep you guys safe." And then next thing I know, I hear pop, pop, pop and an open line and just screaming. Well, it turned out the RP, the lady who was calling her husband, pulled his firearm and ended up shooting one of the guys.
Oh man.
So actually hearing that over the phone, that was kind of like, wait, did I just hear that? right? So that was one that definitely stuck. And then I had also around that same time an ambulance that was doing a psychiatric transfer from a few counties over. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning. They were coming up the freeway, and the psych patient somehow broke out of his restraints, knocked out the EMT attendant in the back, reached through the front like little window of the ambulance into the driver portion of the cab, grabbed the steering wheel. The ambulance ended up rolling and kind of injuring and trapping the attendant in the back. And I had the driver on the phone because they didn't have our radio system, so they were calling on 911. And the psych patient was running naked down the freeway and ended up getting tasered by highway patrol. So,
Jeez.
Yeah, those are probably my top three that I can most vividly remember.
Holy man.
We'll revisit the shit magnet.
I know. Yeah. Holy cow. And it's with every single one of those, you've got like a intense, every type. And what I mean by types, I mean like an outrageous or a gut wrenching, there you've got one in almost each category there. And it's good also that we talked about how you decompress, because you would definitely need to decompress after hearing all of that, especially with folks that, are stuck in their properties now because they decided to stay. And, you listen to however much you listen until eventually, the phone call is dropped, or there's other things that are going on. And that's one of the things too that, I want people who are watching and listening to this to understand that there's some things that we hear. And even though there's video to 911 that's being used in a lot of places now, we're still seeing it in the sense that everything that we're hearing, we're piecing together in our minds. And sometimes it's worse than what the actual situation is.
Oh yeah.
But sometimes it's spot on. And those things stick with you, and you have to figure out how you're going to end up coping with that. Those, and especially, and hopefully it's a healthy coping technique that you're using, because man, there's a lot of times that some of those coping techniques can take you, and then you've got other issues that are going on there as well. But it's awesome to hear and know that the both of you not only have each other, but it sounds like you have a good support system all around in general to be able to help with a lot of these things.
Yeah. And I would say it's true for her and for me that we can pick up the phone, call one of the fire stations, or, she can get a hold of one of her officers and kind of, talk, decompress about the call, find out maybe the outcome. 'Cause that's something we don't get a lot of the times, is the outcome.
Right.
So that's really, I think we're both really lucky in that aspect too, that we can kind of potentially see the call through a little bit.
Yeah, that is always good to have that gift of closure, because you are right. We don't always get that. And I will always be grateful for the few who gave me that gift of closure, because there was tons and tons of calls that I took, but there were those few that I got that gift of closure that I definitely needed it, because I would still probably be fucked up from some of those calls if I didn't know, if I didn't have that. And it sucks that there are a lot of folks out there that don't get that closure sometimes. And hopefully a lot of things will just continue changing, because things have continued to change and are getting better and better and better. So Ashley, how about you? Some of the of course, again, as I mentioned with Greg, as long as you feel comfortable, what are some of the calls that stick with you?
So I've kind of, thankfully, haven't been the call taker in a lot of calls, but I've been in the room when calls have come in of, dead children. There was an agency that one of my friends was a deputy for, and he was killed in the line of duty. And lots of, I can't think of one that really sticks. Like there's the ones that you say a name and you're like, oh yeah, we know exactly about that call. The ones that kind of stick for me, like I try to focus on the good ones. I have my little like fluff stories that I get to tell. And but for me, I'm fascinated by psychology, like what makes your brain tick that way. And I tend to be the lucky one that ends up negotiating for an hour plus with the drunk guy who's barricaded and wants the officers to shoot him. And those are my favorite because, you know, he's up here, he's pissed off at the world. And then, you know, you talk to him and the satisfaction of getting him to come out, hands up, you know, no, everybody walks away just fine. Those are kind of my favorite. And I seem to be the one to get all the crazy, the crazy people, the drunks, the ones that want to, you know, hurt themselves or end it. And I don't know, just the satisfaction of convincing them that, hey, there's going to be another day tomorrow. Let's approach that new day tomorrow.
See, and I love that. I love that that's where you went with it as well, because there's a lot of horrific that is in 911, right? But there's a lot of stuff that is good and a lot of stuff that's rewarding. And for those who are watching and listening who heard Ashley say, those are my favorite ones, I have to explain because I would get this as well. I would say, you know, my favorite calls to take were domestic violence calls, and people would go, is there something wrong with you? And I was like, well, maybe a little bit, right? Because it takes a special person to be in this profession, right? To have this career and make it through and do well and everything. But in this explanation, what I mean is, you know, in just the way, Ashley, you were saying, you know, these are the moments where you're putting like, not that you don't put everything into every call. It's just, there's a lot more resources. And like you said, that satisfaction of when you're done, everything that has gone into that call, you did that. And you get to have that moment of triumph. And I tell people, you need to make sure to write down your wins. If you're not journaling already, or even on a scrap piece of paper, man, write down those wins, because when you're having a hard shift, when you've taken a hard call and you have those moments that you're sitting there thinking, am I in the right place? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Am I doing enough? You are doing enough. You go back and you read those wins and you remember that why, you know, why you started to begin with.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing to have those. So this has been awesome to have the both of you on this episode. This has been a lot of fun. And I can't believe we're already at the hour. Because it didn't even feel like we've been talking that long. So I've got one last question for the both of you, and it's not a question that I sent you. So,
Okay.
so Ashley, I'll start with you, and the question is, and it'll be the same for the both of you, but to start out with, Ashley, if you could go back in time, because you've got 19 years, if you could go back in time with the knowledge you have now to talk to yourself in the beginning of your career, what advice would you give yourself?
It would probably be trust your instincts. I mean, you're in this field for the right reasons. It pretty much, you can say that across the board. Anybody that's putting themselves in the position to try to help people, your heart's in the right place. And regardless of how much training you have, you know, how many years on, you're going to fuck up. I mean, to err is human. We may sound robotic, but we are humans. And just trust your instincts because you're doing the right thing.
Awesome. Thank you so very much. And Greg, same question. If you could go back in time with all the knowledge that you have now to talk to yourself in the beginning, what advice would you give yourself?
Probably because I can remember my early years, I would definitely kind of beat myself up if I made a mistake. To, you know, hold your head high. You're doing a very noble profession, very, you know, something that not a lot of people can do. So just stick with it, keep at it, keep doing what you're doing. It's worth it. You're making a difference. you're going to make mistakes, learn from them, and just keep doing what you're doing. And in the long term, in the long run, it's going to feel good, and you're going to be very happy with what you've done.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you both once again for being on the podcast. This was so much fun to get to learn more about the both of you. Also, how you ended up getting together again. I mean, what are the odds? Like, that is so awesome, man. I'm happy for the both of you, and just for everything that you do for this profession. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course. It's been a lot of fun, and I will be right back here with you in just one moment. And for those who are watching and listening, if you have any comments, questions, or you ever want to be a guest on the show, you can email us. And that is going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, that is wttpodcast@gmail.com. And if you are new to dispatch, seasoned dispatcher, or retired 911 dispatcher, give me a call. And what I mean by give me a call is send me a message. I would love to share your story. I would love to have you on the podcast. And an easy way to sign up is to simply go to links.co/WTT podcast. And that's links with 2 I's.co/WTT podcast. Just scroll down just a little bit. There's a button there that you can go to schedule an episode. And I would love to have you on and share your story. So thank you all very, very much. Also, this broadcast, I was about to say live broadcast. This broadcast has been sponsored by InDigital, a leader in next-gen core services, and a big shout out again to our Social Media Plus sponsor for the month of March, Prepared. Make sure to check out the information that is in the beginning and also at the end of this episode. And also check them out. It's prepared911.com. Check out everything that they are doing. They are doing some excellent, excellent stuff. And I can't say enough about them. But again, thank you very much to Prepared for being a sponsor for the month of March. And this can be seen on Facebook as well as as long as it's up, right? Because it went down earlier today. It's March 5th. That this can be seen on Facebook, YouTube, X, as well as LinkedIn Live and Instagram at times, but also to listen 24/7, the audio portion of the flagship show Within the Trenches podcast. You can listen 24/7, and that's on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone, and we will see you all in the next one.
Quality assurance and quality improvement can be two of the most time-consuming tasks for 911 supervisors and administrators, sifting through hundreds of calls and hours of audio to find the calls they're looking for. Worse, sometimes QA and QI don't occur until longer after a call has occurred, making it difficult to train new hires as they develop their skills in real time and creating the opportunity for mistakes to be repeated. Prepared Assist can help change that. Prepared Assist processes and transcripts call audio in real time while giving supervisors the ability to set keyword triggers that alert them whenever a certain word is said on a call. After they're alerted, the supervisor can watch the call happen in real time, ensuring that it's handled properly and passing on any training guidance immediately after. With real-time QA and QI through Prepared Assist, your center can operate more efficiently and effectively. Visit prepared.com/QA-QI-audio